Good evening and welcome to a fifth in a series of forums with candidates for office for November 2nd that is being brought to you by Cayuga Community College and the Citizen, shown on Spectrum, Verizon Fios, and ARMA, the Auburn Regional Media Access, and played on the college's radio station 89.1. I'm your moderator, Guy Cosentino. On November 2nd, voters in the Cayuga County Legislative 13th District will go to the polls to pick a new person to represent them in the Cayuga County Legislature. Democrat and Working Families candidate, as well as Auburn Party candidate Christine Calarco, is facing Republican conservative Michael Pettigrass to fill the seat of legislator Timothy Lattimore, a Republican who was term limited out of the legislature. This is the 13th district of Cayuga County, is one of the few districts up this year where there is no incumbent. It's located roughly in the center of the city of Auburn. The position of a member of the county legislature pays $13,500 as a base salary, and currently the legislature is divided, the 15-member legislature is divided up with 6 Democrats, 5 Republicans, 1 conservative, and 3 non-affiliated members. With half the legislature up this year and 4 incumbents not running for re-election, control of the legislature could change this January, depending on the outcome of these elections that we're having forums for. Representing the press today, as usual, is a familiar face, Jeremy Boyer, the executive editor of The Citizen, who runs a column on Thursdays on the media, is in the studio again with us to ask the questions of the candidates. As we have said in the past, because of the worldwide pandemic, we've had to change the format a little bit and how we run these forums. Both of our candidates are in the studio. We've limited the number of individuals in the studio, with everyone being masked. The candidates, as long as they are 6 feet apart and seated, can take their masks off, as can Mr. Boyer and myself. We're going to then go now to our opening statements, and prior to the taping of the show, we have the candidates flip a coin to see who goes in order first, and they will close in that reverse order at the end. Mr. Pettigrass, who is on the Republican and conservative lines, has 2 minutes for his opening statement. I will be the timekeeper today, and they are well aware of what our time restraints are. So we'll hear from Mr. Pettigrass first, again on the Republican and conservative lines. Welcome to the studio.
Thank you. I'm Michael Pettigrass. My wife Stacy and I have 6 children and 2 grandchildren. I'm a lifelong resident of Auburn. I was born in District 13, and I've lived in my home in the district for the past 26 years. I'm seeking the position of county legislator because I'm deeply concerned in which the direction of the county is headed. I want to leave our community a better place for our children and grandchildren to live in. I'm a graduate of Auburn High School, class of 1983, proud graduate of CCC and SUNY Brockport with a bachelor's degree in criminal justice. I've been employed for over 28 years as a counselor and now senior counselor in the Guidance and Counseling Unit for New York State Department of Corrections, and I work at Auburn Correctional Facility. This is my first time running for political office. However, my family has a strong tradition of community service that I want to continue. My father, John, was corporation counsel for the city of Auburn for 18 years. My grandfather founded the Pettigrass Funeral Home, which has served generations of families in the community. And my brother, Joe, has worked out of the county attorney's office for the past 23 years. Too many young people continue to leave our county as their opportunities for quality career employment dwindle year after year. We need to reverse this trend and provide opportunities needed to not only keep our younger generations here, but also to make our communities attractive enough to draw in those from other areas. Additionally, too many seniors and retirees leave our county as the taxes grow at a rate that is not sustainable or feasible for them. Our government continues to grow, our population continues to shrink. These trends need to change. With 28 years working as a counselor, I believe I have good listening and problem-solving skills. Working for the state government, I have successfully navigated big bureaucracy throughout many years. There are many serious issues facing our county, some new and some that have been plaguing our community for years. I can bring a spirit of collaboration to the county legislature, which I believe is lacking. Working together as a team, more can be accomplished. In order to be effective, all elected officials should be listening to the concerns and issues of the people they represent. I will be doing this. Today, I ask for your vote.
Thank you, Mr. Pettigrass.
Thank you.
We'll now hear from Christina Calarco, who's on the Democratic Working Families and Auburn Party line. Welcome to the studio.
Thank you very much for having me. First, I'd like to thank Mr. Cosentino, the Citizen, and CCC for providing this opportunity for me to speak to the voters, and thank you to the voters for listening. As a high school teacher here in Auburn High and a former coach and a very active community member, I'm always striving to be a positive role model to my students. I want to show them that we can be a positive part of the community and move things forward. I've always told my students that if they want change, they need to be the ones to do that. And so now is my chance to show them and lead by example. Over the last several years, many good things have happened in our area. We have seen a revitalization of downtown Auburn. We've seen increased tourism within the county, and we've also seen an increased awareness to protect Owasco watershed. I want to be a part of this forward movement for our area and help everyone see that this is an area in which they can establish roots, raise their families, and make a life here. With that, I humbly ask for the voters to support me in my bid for County Legislator District 13. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now turn to Mr. Boyer for the next roughly 50 minutes, and he'll ask questions of either of you. As we've discussed before we set up taping, he'll go back and forth with his questions, and I'll keep time, and we'll give you 2 minutes for each answer. If you want to interject and follow up on something that you've already spoken on, just give me the high sign and we'll give you an additional minute. Mr. Boyer, welcome back.
Thank you, and thanks to both of you for participating in today's forum, and we'll try to get through a lot of different issues as best we can. It was interesting, both your opening statements were basically what my first question was about, because when, and this is a shameless plug for the Citizen, but we have a candidate guide online, and you both filled out a survey, and that's on the website, kind of stating some of your reasons for running, and you each had quite a different vision or outlook on the state of the county and on local government. And I think you both articulated that here in your opening statements. So Mr. Pettigrass, you speak about being deeply concerned with the direction in which the county and the city are headed. And Ms. Clarka, you talked about a rebirth and seeing things going in a positive direction. So I'd just like you each to kind of elaborate on that assessment, what makes you feel that way, but also, talk about what your opponent is saying as well in the way they are viewing things.
Okay, we'll give you both each 2 minutes. We'll start with Mr. Pettigrass. You'll have 2 minutes, and then we'll follow up on that.
Well, the county, most recent census shows that the county population is down to about 76,000 people, and the city of Auburn census is down to about 26,000 people. This is should be an alarming issue for everybody. We continue to lose people in our community. We need people here to maintain our tax base. We need more business. We need economic growth, and we need a place for our future generations to be able to prosper. We have to find a way to keep people in our community, and we need the ability to have them maintain a fruitful career and have a family that can be successful. And we can't do that if we continue to lose people. We have to find a way to turn the direction around and maintain our population.
Thank you. Ms. Clark, you have 2 minutes on this issue of where you are in the county vision and also what your opponent's talking about.
So when I see positive growth here in Cayuga County, I think back to when I first moved back. I left this area for a few years to attend college and to pursue a career in New York City. Upon my return, downtown Auburn had, I think, maybe 1 or 2 restaurants, and it was really desolate compared to what I remembered as a child. And over the last 15 years, I've seen that there's been significant change. We see breweries opening up, restaurants opening up. While I'd love to see more retail downtown, I feel like that's starting to trickle in. Owasco Lake has always needed protection, and I feel like now it's on the forefront of people's minds. So that's why I feel that there is positive change that is happening and that we need to continue with that. I agree with Mr. Pettigrass that the population decline is an issue, and we need to make sure that there are jobs here and homes, affordable homes for people to stay and actually plant roots. But I want to take it from a positive perspective that we are starting to implement those changes, and we can continue to do so.
Mr. Pettigrass, you have a minute on this. So
it is nice that we have new, smaller businesses, restaurants and bars and breweries, but as a whole, we need larger business. We need something that's going to stimulate more economic growth. It's taking too long. We can't count on tourism and the smaller businesses. We have to find ways to bring in larger businesses and have opportunities, career opportunities for our generations to stay.
Thank you. Anything to add? Okay. Mr. Boyer.
Okay. the person you're replacing, legislator Timothy Lattimore, has been successfully won 3 elections and is wrapping up because of term limits, as Guy mentioned in his opening. So that's a person that this district knows very well. He's represented the constituents here. So to give them a sense of how you would be alike and similar, I just ask you that question. Compare and contrast yourself, how you would be as a legislator compared with Mr. Lattimore.
I think that I already have a very active role in the community. I'm the president of the Cayuga Museum. I've sat on the Ignite board. I'm currently a member of Major Palooza. I've always been very active and wanting to make sure that people knew me and I was part of this community. And I think that Tim Lattimore has quite a bit in common with that. He's always been very visible in the community out there, and I want to definitely emulate that. I also think that being a teacher allows for me to understand how to listen to people and hear different perspectives, as that is what I do every day and all day, so that I will take those skills and use them to help make sure that my constituents feel heard and that their concerns are valid and going to be addressed.
Okay, Mr. Pettigrass, on comparing and contrasting your style to former Mayor Lattimore's.
Well, Mr. Lattimore served our community for many years. He served as mayor. He served as on city council. He served on the county legislature, obviously. He's been on city planning. He was on city planning for, I think, 10 years. I devoted to our community, spent many years helping our community, and is still doing that. I hope to bring up that and continue on with that. To compare yourself to somebody is difficult. I think that Mr. Lattimore has done an admirable job serving our community. I hope that I could do the same. I would like to be able to help this community. I've lived in the city of Auburn my entire life. I see the direction in which it's going. I think we need to have a little bit more of a positive move, and I think that we need some change. And if I've been going, I've spoken to a lot of people in the community. I've been involved myself in a lot of different community activities, and I interact with a lot of people, and you get a feeling for what people are looking for and what they want. And we need to be more business in, and we need to find a way to keep our young people here.
Thank you, Mr. Boyer.
Okay, an issue to talk about for sure is redistricting. The legislature, most likely the 15 that are sworn in January, are going to make some decisions about what districts will look like in the 2023 election and going forward. The one issue that will certainly have to come into discussion is the number of seats, 15 right now, with 6 in the city. So I'd like to get your thoughts, first of all, on whether you think 15 legislators for the county is the right number, and if you think it should change, in what ways do you think that should change?
Okay, and Mr. Pettigrass, you're up first on this issue of the size of the legislature and change in redistricting.
So I'm in favor of reducing the number of legislative seats within our county. We're currently at 15. This creates a problem with the weighted voting. If you represent one of the 6 city districts, your vote counts less because of the weighted voting. In order to resolve this, I believe that every vote should count equally. So in order to resolve this, and you have to take into account the census and the amount of people living in your district, because of this, I think it's unfortunately necessary to reduce the number of districts, in this case from 15 to maybe 13 or even possibly 11. We need to keep it an odd number for voting purposes. However, in order to make the city districts of equal weighted vote, we probably need to go from, say, 6 to 4 or maybe even 3, which may not be a popular thing to do, or maybe it is. But I think that in order to, if I'm sitting on the county legislature, I would like my vote to be counted as equal as the other people sitting next to me. So I'm in favor of reducing the numbers for that purpose.
Thank you, Mr. Pettigrass.
Thank you.
Mr. Clark, on this issue of the size of the legislature
Yes, Mr. Pettigrass and I agree on this issue. I do think the county legislator 15 is too large of a number. Working within a group, it's hard to get things done with that size. And the voters a few years ago had voted on this issue and approved that things get redistricted and that the size changes. So I think we really need to go back and take care of that and do this redistricting. And the weighted votes do cause issues where people don't feel fully represented. So we need to make sure that the districts are equally distributed and sized so that each legislator's vote will count the same.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Boyer.
All right. Well, now I'm going to ask you to get out your pencil and draw some maps. But given both of you saying that you think reducing is probably the way to go, and part of that is to get to that one person, one vote ideal. With 6 in the city, it would be likely that you'd lose a seat or two. With that in mind, how would you envision, or what do you think would be the ideal way to carve up Auburn? This district right now is kind of a downtown-ish South Street, part of South Street kind of shape. Do you think there's an ideal way to chop the city up into cohesive districts?
Ms. Clarko, your stab at cartography.
I think that's a really difficult question without having all the demographics and the numbers in front of me to say what would be the best. I think it's really important to look at that data, see where people are living, and make sure that the districts are of equal size in terms of population, and that they're not gerrymandered so that everybody can feel like their districts are represented well. But to come up right now with what I think the map would look like, I don't think that I could do that at this moment.
Okay. Mr. Pettigrass?
So currently, the map in District 13 in particular looks more like a jigsaw puzzle than anything else. We obviously have to take into consideration the population in each district, the division of each district. It would be nice to have some straighter lines, something more uniform. I walk probably 500 feet down my street, and I'm no longer in District 13. I'm in a different district. I can walk another direction down my street, and within 2 blocks, I'm once again in another district. 6 districts is difficult to then split up within the city and maintain an equal number of people in the district. Over the years, you can see what's happened with the loss of people once again in our city, and the weighted vote, it's created an issue. And I think just maintaining something that looks much less like a jigsaw puzzle for district lines would be a great improvement.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Boyer.
Okay, and I think I'm correct in this, and maybe you probably know better than me since you've been all over the district the last couple of weeks. But the county office building is in the district. I think one side of the street might be District 15 or something like that, and one side is 13. But anyway, the county office building is obviously the center of county government. There's other offices scattered around, but that building's needs are great as far as renovation and overhaul. And there's been discussion for quite a while now on whether a major renovation is in order or finding a different county office complex, building a new one is the way to go. So I'd like to get your thoughts on that, kind of the weighing where you think the county should go in regards to its sort of centralized hub. Should that stay in where it is now with renovations, or should they be looking to different sites, possibly outside the city?
Mr. Pettigrass, you're up first for 2 minutes.
First, let me say the location of the county office building is ideal. So when you start talking about relocating it, you're talking about moving essential services away from people that live in the city, some with transportation issues. So keeping a centralized location for the county office building and the offices in which serve our community is important. The county office building, I believe, was built in 1967. We have been looking at this issue for years. I believe the county itself spent a significant amount of money several years ago to look at this issue. Nothing came of it. I believe that they've done asbestos abatement in the 5th and 6th floors and maybe the basement. There's obviously, as county government grows, which is another issue, we need more space. The building gets to a point where you have to start dumping a lot of money into it or think about relocating it. we would need, obviously we'd need a little more talk on this, and we'd have to have some figures in front of us to make an honest decision. But how much would it cost us to replace that building? Can we relocate into another part of the city that's accessible to all the people that it serves? And we have to weigh the pros and cons. So I can't give you a specific answer right now, but we do need to resolve this issue.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Pettigrass. Ms. Clarko.
Yes, the county building being in downtown Auburn, I do think is an ideal location. Auburn being the largest city within, or really the only city within our county, and then also being so centralized that people from the north and south can get here in a relatively about the same amount of time. As far as the building, I do know it is in disrepair and needs to be taken care of. I think it's going to be really important before decisions are made, though, to have those figures in front of us, those costs. What is it going to cost to bring that building up to snuff, to say, and make sure that all the equipment, the things like we've moved, things have changed since that was built in the 60s, our reliance on technology and the such. So we need to make sure that building is equipped properly to address those ever-changing technology needs. So it may end up being that we need to build a new facility, but again, we need to really compare those costs to decide what is the best step moving forward. But I do support keeping it within Auburn.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Boyer.
Okay. I think it was last week. Sometimes time gets away from you, especially during campaign season, but I think it was last week that the Attorney General announced a large amount of funding coming from class action opioid lawsuit settlements with pharmaceutical companies. And for Cayuga County, it's more than $1 million potentially could be coming this way. And so county legislature will have to decide or have a large say in how that money gets spent. So I'd like to hear from you on that. What do you think is the best ways to channel that funding?
Okay. I believe Ms. Clarko goes first on this issue.
Thank you. The opioid epidemic is a huge crisis for us, and it's not just Auburn, it is hitting us nationwide. We're seeing the ramifications of this. To receive such a large amount of money to help fund and deal with this crisis, I think there's several things we need to look at doing with it. We need to make sure there's educational programs out there to help our youth understand what can happen if this is the path that they go down. But nevertheless, even with education, it's still going to happen. So we need to make sure that there are treatment options that are open and available to anyone who needs them. Drug addiction is a disease, and we need to treat it as such and make sure that people get the help that they have. And also, I think there needs to be more of a focus on mental health care. Often people turn to drugs because of other things that are going on in their lives, and I think if we can offer the proper mental health care to individuals that need it, we might be able to avoid that, them going down that path of addiction.
Thank you, Mr. Pettigrass, on the use of this money announced by Attorney General James.
So I think it's important that we utilize the money for addiction and recovery services. The opioid crisis continues to grow. In the last recorded year, the rate of preventable deaths increased by 19% in 1 year. That is a staggering number, and it's sad. I think everybody in our community has been touched in one way or another by the opioid epidemic. It's a crisis. We need to get it under control. The money should be used for prevention and recovery services, and certainly education services. And that money will go quickly, but we should put it to good use.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Boyer.
And the other pile of money is the federal COVID relief money. Cayuga County's, I think it's about $14 million in two waves. The county has to decide by 2024 and how it all will be used and have it all spent by 2026. So there is beginnings of a discussion now in the legislature, but that certainly don't see any final decisions on that being made before the new year. So you're going to have whoever wins this race is going to have some influence on that money, how it's used. Talk about what you believe. You probably can't say like use it for X, Y, or Z program, but what are those parameters that you feel like need to be in place when evaluating how those monies will get used?
Mr. Pettigrass, you're up first on this one.
So the American CARES Act and then the American Recovery Plan, which is providing this money to from the federal government to the state and local governments, has specific categories that the money can be spent on. I believe there's 7 categories the money can be spent on and about 65 subcategories. First and foremost, we should involve the public. We should have meetings. We should have open public discussion in regards to how this money is going to be spent. It's a large chunk of money. It may be something along the lines of a once-in-a-lifetime kind of thing where you get this kind of money coming from the federal government to the county. Here you go, spend it. We need to spend it wisely. We should be listening to the people that live in our county. What do you want to spend this money on? You have to stay within the parameters that which the federal government has set up. I have some thoughts on it. You know, we certainly have some infrastructure issues that it could be utilized for. We have to be careful if we utilize it for infrastructure, only because the federal government may be coming out with yet another federal infrastructure bunch of money coming our way. So we need to involve the public. We should be getting their input and finding out what they find, what we should hear their concerns first. Then as a group of legislators, we should be acting on that and sticking within the parameters the federal government gives us.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Pettigrass. Mr. Clark, on the use of the $14 million from Washington.
Yeah, so I do understand that there are parameters that have been put in place to utilize those funds, and with some of them having a little bit looser regulations than others. I think it's really important, first and foremost, that we don't use that money to offset operating costs and things like that for the temporary time being, because that is not going to be there forever. So these should be one-time investments to help boost our economy. I think we should be looking at infrastructure, drawing in businesses to set up shop here and help increase our employment rate. And also we need to offset the cost of the pandemic. The cost of the pandemic has been great for a lot of our departments, and we need to make sure that those costs have been offset for them also. But I do agree with Mr. Pettigrass. I think it is a really good idea to hear from our constituents in our county about how they would want that money spent, because it is important that their voices are heard, and we try to abide by their wishes when we can.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Boyer.
Well, it kind of leads to a question about how do you hear, you know, how do you get the pulse of the constituents? And just as a legislator, I mean, you can call a meeting and say, tell me your ideas, but you know, the reality is you may not get a ton of people to show up. So what are your ideas for how you go out and get that input from the people that you're representing?
Ms. Clarko, you have 2 minutes.
Yeah, that is tough to find out what people really are thinking, because you can have those meetings and really you get a handful of people, and they're not always the voice of everybody. I think it's important to be very visible in the community and let people know that you're open to those discussions, so people, if they see you out and about, feel like they can have a conversation with you about things. I think there also should be other ways for there to be open communication, such as an email setup or something like that, where people can put in their thoughts and their concerns, and know that somebody's going to reach out to them and talk to them about their concerns.
Mr. Pettigrass?
So that is what our county legislator is for, our city government. They should have continual open lines of communication with the people they represent. COVID has made it a little more difficult, and that has to be acknowledged. However, we still can find ways of getting public input, whether it be through the internet and emails, or whether it's through Zoom meetings. Attending the county legislative meetings have been difficult. The last one, last month, wasn't open to the public except for Zoom. The prior two were. It's depending on the COVID numbers, it kind of dictates where we're going with this. But we do have ways of maintaining open lines of communication. We have to be invitive to the public. We have to let them know we really do want their input, and we should be asking them. We could still have meetings. We can still space out. We can still interact with people through Zoom and emails, and we need to interact with people. It's their money. We should be using it in an appropriate way.
Okay. Thank you. Before turning to Mr. Boyer, let me just, we're about halfway through our fifth in a series of forums here at Cayuga Community College, and co-sponsored with the Citizen. We have the candidates for the 13th Legislative District, which is in the center of the city of Auburn. It includes, this is for a district that has an open seat with Tim Lattimore being termed out of the legislature as he runs for City Hall, and he will be here in the studio next week. We have Michael Pettigrass, who's on the Republican and Conservative lines, and Christina Clarko, who is on the Democratic Working Families Party and the Auburn Party lines. They're being asked questions by Jeremy Boyer, the executive editor of The Citizen, and we'll turn back to Mr. Boyer for the second half of our forum.
Okay. I'd like to talk a little bit about the COVID-19 vaccines and the county health. The county has a huge role in vaccinating the public. The department has been out there in social media and press releases promoting the vaccine as safe and effective, but Cayuga County remains kind of in the bottom third for vaccination rate in New York State. So I'd like to ask you both, first of all, are you satisfied with the county's vaccination rate? Kind of explain why or why not, and then secondly, what would you do as a legislator to either amplify or how would you support or not support the county health department in their efforts to push vaccines?
Mr. Pettigrass, you have 2 minutes on the issue of COVID vaccines.
Well, first let's say that it was a difficult thing to have a pandemic thrown at anybody and have to deal with it, not expecting it. No one saw this coming. The county health department, I think, started out doing well, given what they had to deal with. And as time went on, they had the ability to learn from what other people were doing, and maybe we could be doing a better job right now from a county level in educating people in order to show them why the vaccination should or shouldn't be taken. Our numbers are low. The county, you look at the surrounding counties, they have higher vaccination rates than Cayuga County. So in that point, it is disappointing, but acknowledge it's a difficult job. I think that at the state level, you saw the governor on TV every day. The county did an adequate job. The city, I think what you want to see is your leaders visible. When there's a crisis, you want to see your leaders visible. I don't think we saw a lot of our city leaders, not that it was an easy thing to do, but the county, I think, did an adequate job to start with, but as the months went on, and now we're into a year and a half plus, I think we could be doing a better job of getting the vaccination rates up just due to the statistical data.
Ms. Clarko, on the issue of vaccinations, how they've done and what you can do as a legislator.
Yes, I think the vaccination rate in Cayuga County is unfortunately still too low. I think our county health department has done quite a bit to try to encourage people to get vaccinated, and when they partnered early on with the city to have the fire department and EMTs help distribute and get those vaccines out to people, I thought they did a really great job with that. I think we need to continue on with education about why we need to be vaccinated and the safety and efficacy. I personally, when I talk to people about how important these vaccines are and how safe they are, I tell people I participated in the Pfizer trial. I wanted to be part of the solution, and so when people say it's not safe, I always say I raised my hand, I took it first to make sure that we can ensure that it was safe for others. So I'd really like to be able to get that message out to people and say it is a safe vaccine for people to get and protect each other.
Mr. Pettigrass, you'll have another minute.
So I would just like to say that I made an educated decision to have myself vaccinated, and I'm not for the mandates. I don't like the idea of forcing a vaccine on somebody. I think that should be a decision that should be made by your primary health care provider and yourself, and making an informed decision. It's disappointing to me that you would be removing people from their jobs, healthcare workers that were on the front line, that were out there dealing with issues that nobody else wanted to deal with, and now we're telling them you don't have a job, and by the way, you're not eligible for unemployment. So I find that disappointing. I think we should work through education and get people vaccinated that way.
Hey, Ms. Clarko, you'll have an additional minute.
Thank you. Since mandates were brought up, I do want to address those. I think that mandates coming from the county level shouldn't be implemented, and if they are going to be implemented, this needs to be a decision that's made by the entire legislator and in conjunction with unions. At this point, we need to follow the guidance that comes from the New York State, the state level, and from the New York State's health department, but I don't think that mandating things at the county level either would be the correct move for ourselves.
Okay. We'll turn to Mr. Boyer.
Okay. Well, I was going to ask you about vaccine mandate for county. I think I know your answers, just based on what you both said, so I don't need to go into that. One big issue in Auburn, of course, continues to be the quality of the water. Owasco Lake has had another year where quite a high level of toxins were showing up in the water treatment plant. Fortunately, it didn't get into the actual treated water, but it becomes a question of if it keeps getting worse, will the system continue to hold up? So, from a county point of view, what would you do as a legislator to try to continue to work on that issue? What do you think are projects or regulations, things that need to happen that you would advocate for as a legislator?
Okay, Ms. Clark, you have 2 minutes on this subject of water quality.
Thank you. The Owasco Lake is such a treasure and needs to be protected for all of our future generations. I do know that recommendations and plans were provided to the state, and they are sitting basically in limbo at this point. We need to be putting pressure at the state level for those recommendations and regulations to be approved so we can put them into place. And the conversations that need to continue need to involve everyone, our farmers, people involved with tourism, the city, the county. We need to make sure all the stakeholders are at the table and have these discussions. We need to protect the lake, but not at cost of completely destroying farmers at the same time. So we need to make sure that those regulations are fair and doable for all that are there. But I think the biggest piece right now is putting pressure on the state to approve those regulations that those stakeholders already came to agreement on.
Thank you. Mr. Pettigrass, role as a county legislator and legislature on water quality.
So Owasco Lake in itself provides water for approximately 70,000 residents. Cayuga Lake provides water. Skaneateles Lake provides drinking water for Syracuse. It's one of our most precious commodities. It's extremely important to protect. We've been working on this issue for years. We haven't really solved it. We see every single year, we see the harmful algae blooms kicking in June or July, not dissipating until October. The water's not safe to swim in. You're afraid to go boating. You don't want your kids in the water. This is really unacceptable at this point. To solve the problem it's going to take years. It's taken many years to get to this point. It's going to take years to solve it. We need to stop talking about it. We need to start implementing some of the ideas. The Owasco Lake Watershed Management Council, I believe, is still working on a 9-element plan that they're going to be presenting to the DEC, I believe, in the next 2 or 3 months. Then it'll sit in the DEC's lap and wait for probably months before they make a decision. We need, as a county, we need to start implementing some of the more logical resolutions that they've come up with. They've been working on this for years. There's a lot of people involved in it, a consortium of people, scientists and people studying these issues, and they've got some great ideas. We just need to implement them. We need to stop talking about it. We need to reduce the nitrogen. We need to reduce the phosphorus in our waters, and there's ways to do that.
In terms of the, for Mr. Pettigrass, just because Ms. Clarko touched on, you're in favor of the state signing off on those rules and regulations that were adopted. Are you? What's your feeling on those? The rules and regulations that were sent by the city and town to the health department last year.
I'm sorry.
How do you support the rules and regulations changes for the watershed that the city?
I do support them. I also support what the Owasco Lake Watershed what they're doing. You got like I said, we've got a consortium of people working there, and they've got a lot of great ideas. They're going to need money, and they're going to need the ability to implement them. But we've been talking about this for years, literally years. We need to start implementing some of the ideas. We need to improve some of the, you've got the wastewater issues, you've got the water infrastructure, you've got the stormwater infrastructure. We have to start working on some of these issues.
And that, Mr. Pettigrass had 2 minutes on that because it was directed to him. Ms. Clark, you have a minute if you want to just talk about the elements plan.
Yeah, there were a large number of people that came together and put that elements plan together and discussed it, and it's just disappointing that it's still sitting there. I know when Kathy Hochul took over as governor, she said she was going to start to address those things, so I'm really hoping that she hears our plea and helps to get this moving forward.
Mr. Boyer.
Okay, well, let's move on to the county leadership structure. That's going to be another one that the new legislature will we expect to dive into. It's been 2 years now since there was a full-time administrator running day-to-day operations, and the reason that hasn't been filled is because there has been a discussion about long-term, do we need to change it and adopt a different form. So I'd like to hear your thoughts on what you advocate for in terms of the long-term solution to county government leadership structure and why.
And this is to both candidates?
Yeah.
So because that specific question was to Mr. Pettigrass, I'm going to have you start this particular one on structure, and then we'll go back and forth.
So I'm in favor of a county executor as opposed to a county administrator. A county executor would be accountable to the people. If you're unhappy with that person's performance, after 4 years, you can go to the polls, you can vote that person out. When we have a county administrator, they're appointed by a few people in the county legislature, and that performance you may be happy with, you may not, but they're there. We've spent a lot of time and we've spent a lot of money in the last couple county administrators that have, most people will probably say, has failed. We need to move forward from that. We should learn from our mistakes, and we should move forward. We're going to probably need a referendum and let the people vote on this. We'll let the people decide who the county executor is. I think we're going to have to change the form of a county government, which would require a charter and a referendum, and let the people decide. But I want the person that's heading up our county government to be accountable to the voters, to the taxpayers, and not somebody that was just appointed by a few county legislators.
Thank you. Ms. Clark, on this issue of the county structure, you have 2 minutes.
Yes, I think our county government is definitely lacking in leadership. I know that there has not been very much success with our past administrators, and I know there was at one point they were looking to put in a manager for an interim type position until these decisions can be made. But we think about the county as being a large multi-million-dollar company or corporation. There's always leadership at the top, and we are really lacking that at this point. So I think in the interim, I think it would be smart to have a manager to help with the day-to-day business and operations for the county. What the permanent solution is going to look like, though, if I'm going to be honest, I don't know that I know the exact answer to that at this point. I think I need to learn more about the inner workings of the county legislator itself before I can make an educated decision and say what is going to be the right path moving forward.
Mr. Boyer?
Just in terms of, I guess for Mr. Pettigrass first, since you're advocating for the county executive position, and just to play the devil's advocate on that, some people would say, with a $150 million budget and a population of about 80,000 people, there's no guarantee you get someone that's qualified to run that kind of an operation, and that's why the administrator that you do a search for and vet and interview is the better way to go. So how do you respond to that particular argument?
So just, this is for Mr. Pettigrass?
Yes.
I know you're going to have a separate question for Ms. Clarko?
Yep.
Okay. Yep. Mr. Pettigrass, you get 2 minutes on this.
So we have a lot of county department heads. I would expect the county department heads to utilize their experience and knowledge to be advising the county executive. So voting process should be a part of vetting. The people going to the polls and deciding based upon the information that's presented to them prior to putting somebody into office. And with the large amount of people surrounding the county executive, we would have enough people to lead that person in the right direction. Why do we have all these people? Why do we have all these department heads? We should be utilizing them, their skills, their abilities, put their skills and abilities to use, and let them lead the county executive into the proper direction.
Okay. Ms. Clarko, you will have a minute on the issue of what Mr. Pettigrass said, and then Mr. Boyer can ask you his question.
I definitely understand what Mr. Pettigrass is saying about having an elected official could be somebody that we hold accountable for that position. But again, I just don't feel that I know enough about the inner workings of how the legislator is working on a day-to-day basis to say which way is going to be the right answer. So before I take a stand, I just want to be more educated on how everything works.
Okay. Mr. Boyer, your question for Mr.
Well,
Clarko.
that kind of answered my question.
Okay.
But we'll move on from that and look into.
Ms. Clarko will get the first question because it's her turn. Okay.
So, in the past 2 years, Aileen McNabb Coleman has served as the chairperson for the legislature, and the structure has basically been that she is the day-to-day leader, CEO, if you will, of the county government. She is interested in continuing that role. She is not up for election, so we know she's going to be there in January. We don't know who else is going to be there with her, but I'd like to get your thoughts on, one, just how she's done, critique her performance, and two, would you support her returning for a third year in that role?
You're up first.
I think Aileen McNabb Coleman has done a great job serving in this particular role. She took on a lot when there was quite a bit of work to be done and quite a mess to clean up with the dismissal of the former administrator. So I think she's done a really great job at that, and she's really led us through some troubling times with it being the pandemic. So I would absolutely support her if she wanted to take that leadership role again.
Okay, Mr. Pettigrass on Aileen McNabb Coleman and her future as the chair of the legislature.
So, more importantly, we have to see where the makeup of the county legislature is after Election Day, and who remains, who's new, and what everybody's thought process is. You're going to have a group of 15 different people. You're going to have some same, some new people. Ms. Coleman took on a lot of job functions that she certainly didn't anticipate when the COVID-19 pandemic hit, and that's understandable, and she also took on some additional salary for that. There's positives and negatives to what she's done, and I think that it has to be evaluated by the 15 people sitting in the room that are going to be making that decision. Could be a change, maybe not a change, but there's one of the things you look at is the county treasurer's office. We pretty much dismantled the county treasurer, reduced the amount of job functions and most likely salary, and created a new county position that's, I believe, about $100,000 a year salary. We already had a county treasurer. Is that a result of the leadership that we currently have? We have to look at all the issues. She certainly had a difficult job, and that's acknowledged, and I don't think a lot of people would have been willing or happy to have been in the position that she was thrown into, so she should be commended for that. But we have to look at the people that are going to be there come January 1st and what those 15 people think.
Okay, Mr. Boyer.
It kind of leads to a question about party control. While individual candidates haven't necessarily talked about it, I've certainly seen parties out there on social media saying, put the Republicans in control of the county legislature, or put the Democrats in control of the county legislature, if you want to have, if you want the county to move in the right direction. So, as individual candidates, I guess, how important is that to you in this election? And if so, I mean, what is the difference? What do you think the difference would be between a Democratic run or a Republican run legislature?
Mr. Pettigrass, you're up first with 2 minutes on the GOP case.
Well, ideally, I think it would be nice if we all worked on a common goal. It's extremely important. If not, we're butting heads, we're not making progress. There's a lot of great ideas coming from both sides and some bad ideas coming from sides. Some are workable, some aren't. We need to work together regardless of party, no official party, conservative, Democrats, Republicans. We should be working together. We're elected into this position to represent everybody, not just the people that support us in our party affiliations. I really think it's important that if we're going to make any headway and move in the proper direction, that we have to put aside some of the differences and work together.
Ms. Clarko, do you want to make a case for the Democrats?
I'm always interested when people ask me this question about party politics. And while I am a Democrat and I represent the working families in the Auburn Party also, I don't think that national politics and party politics should play a role at the county level. I think we all should be going in there with the intent of working together collaboratively to solve the problems that our community faces, and that those national level party politics that seem to trickle down to us should not play a role here. We should be focused on doing what's right for the community, and if my decision means that I'm going to go against what my party head might say is the right thing to do, I will always do what I think is best for the community.
Okay. Mr. Boyer, you're down to your last question.
The last question.
And Ms. Clarko gets to be the last question on this,
right,
because she was the one who Mr. Pettigrass started, so we're going to rotate back and forth.
So as you know, I hope you know anyway, that the county legislature runs through a committee system, and different committees vote on resolutions and discuss policy throughout the month leading up to the final meeting. So If you're successful in winning this election, I'd just be interested to know what one or two committees would you think you would be best able to serve on, and why?
Ms. Clarko?
Okay, so I'll be perfectly honest, I don't know of all of the committees that are involved with the county legislator, but one of the ones that I think I could definitely be helpful with would be the Committee on Health, I think, and Human Services. I think my understanding of the population of the community and working with the youth, I have a good feel for what is needed out there. So that would definitely be a committee I would like to sit on.
Mr. Pettigrass, any preference?
Well, of the 6 standing subcommittees, I'd be proud to serve on any of the 6, depending on the needs of the county and whoever's delineating where you're going. I have a lot of years working in criminal justice field, so I'm interested in the Judicial and Public Justice Standing Committee, and I find there a lot of interest in that. Certainly, there's a lot of work to be done in all the 6 different subcommittees, and I'd be proud to serve on any of them.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Boyer. I'll turn to you in just a moment, but we're now going to end with our closing statements. As we said at the beginning, we flipped a coin, and Christina Clarko, who's on the Democratic Working Families Party and Auburn Party lines, will go first with her 2-minute closing.
Well, thank you. I don't think I'll use the full 2 minutes, but I'll give my brief statement. Again, I just want to thank everyone who made this forum happen today. I think this is very important that we're able to speak directly to our voters. As I said, I want to serve my community. I want to be part of forward motion and positive momentum in this community. I've always been actively involved, as my family always has been, and I just want to continue to do so. So I'm just humbly asking the voters for their vote and their support as they go to the polls and vote for me for County Legislator District 13. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll now hear from Michael Pettigrass, who's on the Republican and Conservative lines. Mr. Pettigrass.
Thank you. So the most recent census numbers should be an indicator to everyone that change is needed. The county population is down to 76,000 and the city population is down to 26,000 people. We continue to lose residents as the younger generation finds no career opportunities here, and our retirees and seniors are driven out of their homes and by taxes that continue to rise at unsustainable rates. We need to reverse these trends. We should have a common goal that our community provides enough economic opportunity to make it feasible for our children to stay, and likewise not drive out our seniors and retirees because of the cost of living. We need to bring in more industry to aid our tax base and economy, and we need to provide more incentives to small businesses. The opioid epidemic needs as much attention as we can give it. The rate of preventable deaths continues to rise at an alarming rate. This cannot continue. Our government entities need to stop talking about our water quality issues and start acting. They have been talking about it for years. We need to protect our water supply. We need to reduce the phosphorus and nitrogen that continues to enter our water supply. Public safety is always a primary concern, and I will be a strong supporter of all first responders. I want to be the bridge between the residents of District 13 and the decision and solution-making process in the county legislature. My family has a strong history of serving this community, and I believe I'm suited to continue this tradition. My decades of experience in guidance and counseling while working for the state government has helped position me to be an effective county legislator. By trade, I'm a good listener, and I always want to hear what your concerns are. When you elect somebody to represent you, you entrust them that they will make informed decisions for the betterment of all. I will do this, and I respectfully ask for your vote.
Thank you, Mr. Pettigrass. Thank you both for joining us in the studio to talk to the voters of the 13th District. There's about 2 weeks to go, so good luck on the campaign trail, and we hope you are enjoying the campaign, and thank you and your families for putting yourselves out there.